social media is a weapon. That's a quote. Not spin, not PR, doctrine. Who said it? Benjamin Netanyahu said it. You wonder, right? Who needs missiles when you have the perfect hashtag campaign just lined up? Israel, as we speak, is waging hybrid wars. Bombs on the ground, memes in your feed. Why does it work? Somebody come and welcome to another episode here for the Fun Report, mindful media and bombing your feed. Mindful media and communication. So, yeah, an episode about Israel, sure, right? Hey, do you want to bomb your podcast? Well, no, but it's becoming really obvious, and well, also they're using media and communication theories quite well, to be honest. So let me try to put some, theoretical lenses on it. Okay. So what is happening, right? Some of the current moves that we're seeing right now in Israel, from Israel. So, and I have to look at some of the notes here so that I don't forget them, okay? So the push for state-funded influence operations has been quite strong, right? So Israel's influence, I think we can all agree. So I'm already hesitating because I don't want to be like, yeah, you're anti-Israel. Pardon me. But is the wrong word. You're anti-Israel, but no. It's not a bad thing per se to increase your influence. Okay, so that's one thing. But the state-funded influence operations that are being promoted clearly show the agenda. Now, just trying to increase your influence on a global stage, a local stage, global stage, is maybe not necessarily something terrible, right? So far, I'm not hating just yet, okay? So calm down. You don't have to unsubscribe just yet. Hate comments can wait until maybe 10 minutes in the podcast, okay? We also see that and there's no surprise that official broadcasters in Israel, they echo the lines, right? And they downplay the death in Gaza, for example, right? Because it's all anti-terrorist war, and so that's why it doesn't matter, and so on. So framing, we talked about this many times here on the podcast, right? So if you frame something in a certain way, you have like the whole complex situation, the whole messy situation happening, and you put a frame around it and just highlight what fits your agenda, what fits your narrative. And Israel does it. The Hamas does it too, of course, right? No question. Everybody's doing that. Okay? Just not this podcast. This podcast has no frames. Like, share, subscribe. We also hear a lot that there's lots of pressure on foreign journalists that are reporting from Israel, being from Germany, and and I know difficult relationship, but being from Germany, we hear that a lot as well, that like German reporters are being pressured into not saying certain things or not covering certain things, okay? We see that Palestinian TikTok accounts, for example, are being banned, right? So we can see that there are certain pressure points and there's certain pressures being increased in certain areas. See how I'm trying very hard for you not to cancel me 3 minutes in. Also, the alleged tech deals that they have, right? Google and Netanyahu's involvement for, I noted down, around 45 million USD. Not sure if the number is correct. Allegedly, found it online, verify yourself. But that just shows that they're also investing in what we would call propaganda infrastructure. If you own the infrastructure, or if you are heavily invested in the infrastructure, of course, you can make certain decisions how this infrastructure is being used, right? Makes some sense, I think. So it's not just the information about the war that they're concerned about. It's more like framing as, utilizing it as information as part of the war. The information is the war. So not the information about the war, but information is the war. And that's a big shift in communication, in how media is being used. Okay. And now you might wonder, like, okay, cool. I hope you're not saying cool, but why does this matter? Because in an asymmetric conflict like this, legitimacy is maybe even more important than the tanks you have rolling on the ground. So don't get me wrong. They are very important to have them rolling on the ground, obviously, if you're the state, you need the tanks rolling on the ground. But being seen as legitimate and being seen as in the right and having the right to send those tanks might be even more important than actually having all those tanks. Okay. And we see it right now that Israel is being increasingly isolated from the international community, right? Like, states are recognizing Palestine as a country, as a state. Demonstrations in many countries are like freeing Palestine and so on. So now, of course, Israel struggles, but still tries to control the narrative abroad. To say, hey, we're just defending ourselves, for example. We're doing all those things because we've been attacked first. So why are we not allowed to defend ourselves? Why are we not allowed to prevent further damage being done to us? Right, so that's the narrative. So if you can control the infrastructure, you can control the narrative that's being put out there. You can control the narrative that gets the attention. Okay? And we see lots of even domestic protests, demonstrations within Israel against the current government. Then the government reframes that as betrayal. Right? We have been betrayed by our own people. We have been betrayed by certain groups, certain human rights groups, maybe that call for help for Gaza and so on. And they're betraying the interests of the state, which is, of course, protecting their own people according to their frame that they're putting on it, right? So this, of course, has also a chilling effect on the press. Then what is the press supposed to do? What is the press supposed to say, right? Do I, as a press, cover the betrayal and say, yes, look at them, they betrayed us, the state? Or if I don't do it, will I be called someone that betrays the state as well? Will I be put in the same pot, right? Difficult situation. And if you look at this, it's not the first time this happens, right? There are theories of power and propaganda that have been basically written for moments like this. And again, not trying to make light of any situation, but as a German who had to go, and it's good that we had to go through years and years of history classes learning about what happened back in the day, which is good. We should all learn that. I can tell you, this sounds all quite familiar. Okay. By the way, this is not just happening in Israel, but Israel is right now the go-to example. Okay. So let me look at because I have a long list of theories, because like I said, this moment is made for media and communication theories, okay? So the initial one, the most obvious one, is the propaganda model, right? Noam Chomsky talked about it, Herman talked about it. Like, there's so many researchers, the academics that talked about propaganda. And, propaganda usually has 5 states, which propaganda is happening. Like, I think in this case, we focus on the sourcing, for example, the flag, like, distracting stuff and so on. We also see that Israeli media, for example, also puts like an advertiser filter on it. Like, so who can advertise when, what for, what is being highlighted, what is allowed on the air, for example, what is being censored on TV, not much to censor probably because no one's daring to say anything, but what is allowed online as well. Okay, so that's very much like propaganda, right? We only see the state-approved, so to speak, message. Now, Of course, the state will say, no, that's freedom of speech here. Of course, we have freedom of speech. From the outside looking in, doesn't always look like it. Correct me if I'm wrong. Try, if you want to correct me, I would appreciate it. But if you're yelling or insulting, I'm not reading it. Okay, so try to move your anger to the side. And if you actually have like counter arguments, happy to listen. Okay, so propaganda model is one propaganda 101 we're seeing right now. Second one is, or we talked about this before as well, Baudrillard's hyperreality. Okay, because what you see online, we talked about hyperreality before, so not repeating everything, but hyperreality basically means we're not sure what is real, what's not real. You see things, and even though you don't know if it's real or not real, because you see it and future decisions are based on what you see in the moment, for you it becomes the new reality. Okay, so broken it down in like 30 seconds. So what you see about the war in Gaza, for example, becomes your truth. So if you are in Israel, if you are an audience for their kind of content, then what you see becomes your truth, and your decisions are based on what you see in your feed, what the algorithm shows you, or what you see on state-sponsored media, for example, right? So then this is your truth. So that is hyperreality. It's not actually real because there's way more to it, but we only see what we're being shown, and we only understand the narrative that's being put behind it, thanks to framing and agenda setting, so that this then becomes our truth, and that's basically hyperreality. Okay, so now I add a few more that we haven't discussed as much, but if you are a loyal listener, an OG, then you know those already, because we did mention them a few times here and there, but not as often. So we also talked about Foucault. Foucault, he talked about the power when it comes to communication, power and knowledge, right? So if you own the discourse, if you can steer the narrative and dictate what people are talking about, what the news are talking about, not necessarily what exactly they're saying, but what they're talking about, then yes, it's agenda setting, right? So you set the agenda, like what do they talk about, and eventually you decide what the people talk about, because they will hear it over and over and over again. But you also assert domination. You hold on to actually dominate the feed, the news, because it's in your power now. You're steering the narrative. If you can steer the narrative, you're in charge, you're powerful, and you make the decisions, basically. Okay, so that's very important. So if you steer, if you are in charge of the discourse, what people talk about, how they talk about it, maybe even, but not so much even how, but like what they talk about, then you have the power to influence what people discuss. And that goes hand in hand with the basic communication theory you learn in your first class at uni when you study anything communication, the encoding decoding model by Stuart Hall. Okay, so in this case we see that the state encodes one meaning to the message, and they think, okay, see, we're saying, for example, that we've been under attack for 70 years and now we're just trying to defend ourselves. But global audiences, they may resist that message, and they see it differently. They see it in a way like, yeah, but you've been attacking them the whole time. You try to get them out of their homes. You are having plans to actually tear it all down and make it into like a new beach resort. That's the things that you're saying. That's the things that we understand. So you encode it in one way, but the audience, especially on a global level, decodes it in a different way, because that's encoding, decoding. So not always do we understand messages the way they are intended to be understood, which in this case for us, good, right? But then again, the ones that are on the side of the state, they will understand it exactly the way the state wants it to be understood. Okay, so that's the basic, the very basic, but not in terms of easy, but like very common communication theories. Okay, communication media theories. I have two more. One, the lion politics. It's actually called like that, the lion politics, which suggests that fabrication, lies, are actually not a mistake in politics. Because some politicians might say, oh yeah, sorry, it slipped out. didn't mean it like that. I was just in the moment. But this theory actually suggests that fabrication, lies, are used to govern, a part of governance. And that's actually a strategy that has been actively pursued. Now you might say, yeah, no surprise, of course politicians lie. Yeah, but it looks like actually that's been, it's an active strategy. Okay, so it's not just happening, oh, no, something slipped or whatnot. It's an active strategy to actually get things done, if you will. And the last one, Zuboff, she says, we live in surveillance capitalism. It's one of the later theories that I also reference in my upcoming book, Reality and Better. Sign up now, realityandbetter.com. She says data itself is being weaponized for narrative control, okay? So, and this is amazing context right now because I'm teaching a data analysis class right now at uni. So you're using data, and we always say like data doesn't lie. Well, data itself doesn't lie, but the story you tell with data, they definitely lie. You can tell so many stories with data. It's like framing all over again. You have a bunch of data, but then you can put different frames on looking at the data. You can choose to share certain data and then ignore other data. If you're Israel, you share how many Israeli hostages have died, for example, and it's very, very sad. But then you just ignore how many civilians in Gaza died, for example. You're not talking about that, right? So the numbers, like the stories that tell the numbers, is always up to the person telling the story, right? So data itself is being weaponized for narrative control. Again, if you control the narrative, you control what people talk about, what people think, and so on. Yeah, so forget the war room. It's been like a thing of the past, and right now in the White House again, but it's really not important. Forget the war rooms. This is war feeds. And I think that's something lots of governments, countries, states have to understand. And the thing is, if you look at this and you're like, okay, sure, every politician lies, blah, 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 and so on. Yeah. But then if this, a specific example, you have famous talk show hosts, for example, right? Like in Israel, there's like this guy called Magal, and he's actually shielding Netanyahu and he's attacking dissenters, right? And there are always different opinions in politics everywhere, understandable. But then attacking people in such a way that just don't agree with what you're doing is pretty crazy. And there are lots of unbelievable, they're like bot networks. There's research out there. So if you don't believe it, comment, I'll send the links. There are bot networks out there that push hashtags such as Israel under siege, for example. Like they try to make it look like Israel is being attacked all the time and is just defending itself, for example, okay? Or on TikTok and IG, we have like shadow bans on Palestinians. Now, they might say that's not happening, but again, statistics, happy DM or comment, and I'll send the link. It shows that Palestinian voices, Palestinian creators are definitely not being shown as much anymore. I'm not sure how just anecdotal evidence. When the war started, I had lots of feeds, lots of reels from Palestine in my feed. Right now, there's zero. I have to actively look for it. I don't see anything popping up anymore. Even the guy I follow, a reporter from Gaza, does not show up in my feed. I have to go to his profile to see it. Coincidence? Sure. Yeah. And you can compare it. So it's not only happening in one place. We have the Russian troll farms, for example, that try to post stuff to rile up Americans and mingle with all the elections all across the world, right? Probably right now in Germany as well. So not just pointing fingers, by the way. We have China's TikTok diplomacy, right? So the feed as a battleground is everywhere. And that's why it's so important to understand that this isn't just Israel specific. It's a new template of how hybrid wars are being done. Israel is just doing it to a great extent right now, and it's just so obvious to see. Okay, so what does this lead to is the question. Well, this will lead to more hybrid wars, like I just said, bombs and feeds, and both kill. And the bombs, sure, they kill people in the moment. The feeds, they might kill even more. And they don't misunderstand. Of course, the actual real life war is terrible. But again, if you control the feed in the narrative, that war might go on even longer. All right? And more people are behind it, for example. And the thing is, as a citizens, we don't see anything from the war, right? We consume the customized, the curated war in our feeds with the narratives. And that's the problem. So who do we trust? So the future conflict might not just be army versus army. It might be algorithm versus algorithm. Who can influence the algorithm better so that then the masses are behind party A or party B? Crazy time. So the next ceasefire might not even be signed in Geneva. It be A/B tested by Elon on X. With this sad closer, we're ending here. Let me know what you think. Shout out in the comments, please. I'm curious. Do you want to cancel me now after hating on Israel? I didn't even hate on the country, by the way. Just on that specific leader right now trying to manipulate narratives. Just to make that clear, okay? Nothing against the people. Nothing against the country. Nothing against anyone. Just pointing out that the current regime is doing certain things that need to be mentioned and that we need to be aware of. Don't put words into my mouth that I didn't say. Just saying. Shout out in the comments, because I know you're gonna put words into my mouth that I didn't say. So shout out in the comments so that I can either ignore you if you're yelling or insulting my mom, or have a discussion with you if you actually have a valid opinion. That would be really nice to hear. Until then, stay safe. Take care. Always double check, triple check, quadruple check what you're reading, seeing online. Until next time, Sawadee Ka.